Hello again, this is DVP reporting with my 23rd game scored for the 1984 baseball season. Today's date is Sunday, the 22nd of July, and another Cincinnati Reds baseball game is upcoming this afternoon from Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati. The Reds against the Mets in the final of a 4-game series, and the wrap-up to a 7-game homestand for Vern Rapp's sagging Reds team. It's an off day tomorrow for the ball club for travel. They'll be heading out west to start up a road trip at San Diego, and that excursion will also take Cincinnati into Los Angeles before returning home the final day of this month to start up a lengthy 2-week homestand. My last game scored was on July the 18th, the final of 3 against the Phillies. That was the first leg on this homestand. The Phillies won all 3 games in that series, including that finale that I scored, a 7-5 final. And the Reds have managed only 1 win in the first 6 games on the stand, so this will not be a very profitable river stand whatever. The Mets have taken 2 of the first 3 in this series, and that assures New York of finishing over 500 against the Reds this season, something that has never happened since the Mets came into existence back in 1962. Some 22 years ago, the Mets have never won a seasonal series from the Reds, but it's going to happen this year because New York is 8-3 against us right now, with today's game being number 12 of 12 to be played between the 2 interdivisional ball clubs. I think the closest the Mets came to winning a season series was, ironically, back in 1976. I say ironically because that was one of the better Reds teams, probably the best Reds team ever, as the Reds won 102 games that year and, of course, just walked away with the playoffs and the World Series, sweeping everything, going 7-0 in postseason. But the Mets were able to win 6 of 12 against us that year, and so that's a 500 record. But ever since then, the Reds have been over 500 against them, including each of the last 2 seasons, which is somewhat strange, really, because the Reds have been mired in last place each of the last 2 years. They were 7-5 and 7-5 each of the last 2 years against that team. But, of course, also consider the Mets. Well, at that time, of course, were last-place finishers themselves each of the past 2 seasons, and the Reds are trying to avoid a third straight sixth-place finish, and the New York Mets, no doubt, will avoid their third straight cellar-dwelling year because they have been just unbelievable. It's reminding everybody, I guess, of the '69 Miracle Mets, and this is the '84 edition of the Miracle Ball Club, as they are now in first place by a game and a half. They've been in first for a while. They continue to win baseball games, and against Cincinnati especially, they've taken 7 of the last 8 against the Reds, including a 5-game series sweep just before the All-Star break. So the Mets played just exemplary baseball under rookie manager Davey Johnson, and it's really amazing what they've done this year, and they are a game and a half ahead of another surprisingly good baseball team this year, the Chicago Cubs, who now are in second place in the East. So those 2 teams have surprised everybody. Normally you expect them to occupy the 5 and 6 positions of the East, which is where I had them predicted, Cubs then the Mets, and but that certainly is not going to be the case unless they just completely fall apart in the waning days of the season. I don't think that's going to happen. The Mets now 17 over 500, the best record that they have had in this point during the season since 1973 when they won the division that year, and of course beat out the Reds in a 5-game divisional playoff, then lost to the Oakland A's in the World Series. And of course, I guess that would be the last time the Mets were in postseason play. No, it's not. It was 10 years ago, 1974, when the Mets won the division, I believe, and lost to the Dodgers in the playoffs. So they won it in back-to-back seasons, so it's been 10 years since they've gone to postseason play. And I certainly didn't think that was going to happen this year, but it just might, as they have been playing some great baseball. So they'll be trying for their 3rd win in this series, the Mets will be, and I've got 3 games to recap at the front portion of this cassette, a win and 2 Reds losses. The Reds stopped a 3-game losing streak on Thursday night, July 19th, a 9-6 final, a wild game, 22 hits in the first game of the 4-game series. Mario Soto, not at all with his best stuff, but still, it was enough to get his 10th win of the year and stop a brief 2-game losing streak, his 3rd consecutive subpar outing, really, as he has given up a ton of runs. He's allowed, I think, 20 runs in his last 3 games, lifting his ERA from 2.48 to where it is right now at 3.56, just about its highest mark all year. But still, he got the win on Thursday to go to 10-3. Then Bob Ochinko came on and faced one batter in the 7th inning, gave up a hit. Ted Power and John Franco mopped up. They combined for 2 2/3 innings of 3-hit, no-run ball with a couple of walks and a strikeout. Franco gets a save, his first in a long time, his 4th of the year, to tie him with the man he relieved, Ted Power, for first on the team in saves. Soto went 6 1/3, allowed 6 hits and as many runs, all of them earned. He walked 5 and struck out 8 batters. So not an impressive line for Soates, but enough to get the victory. 9 runs, 12 hits, no errors, 7 left on Thursday. For Cincinnati, the Mets, 6 runs, 10 hits, 2 errors with 10 left on base. Bruce Bereni, the former Red, takes the loss. He allowed 8 hits and 7 runs, only 4 earned in 5 2/3. He walked 4 and struck out 7 and delivered a wild toss. That's his second game against his former teammates. He pitched great ball for 7 2/3 innings in the July 8th ball game at Shea just before the All-Star break, and that he won that game, completing that 5-game Mets sweep over the Reds. And Bruce has now allowed the Reds 10 runs in 12 2/3, something like 13 1/3 innings. But of those 10, only 4 are earned. He allowed a 3-run unearned home run to Dave Parker in that first game in which he faced his former teammates. So he's 1-1 against the Reds a lifetime, 7-10 on the year overall. He's 4-3 as a New York Met with some very good numbers. He had something like a 2.19 ERA as a Met going into that start on Thursday. He's done a fine job for him. Tom Gorman relieved for 1 1/3, allowed 2 hits, a run, a homer to Dave Parker, and a strikeout. Parker got his 8th home run of the season, leading off the bottom half of the 8th inning for an insurance run. Actually, bottom half of the 7th inning he led off with the homer. His 8th of the season to give him sole possession of first place on the team and his 51st run batted in of the season. A lot of people got in on the act. Brad Golden, Mario Soto knocked in a run, his 4th of the year. Dan Dreesen, Eric Davis, Parker, and Dwayne Walker all knocked in runs in the slugfest. There was also a home run by the Mets' Darryl Strawberry, his 13th of the season. Following Gorman for the Mets was Doug Sisk. He allowed 2 hits and a run in 1 inning, and he finished it up for New York. That was a long 8.5-inning game, 3 hours and 17 minutes to complete it. 14,159 witnessed it from the stands. The paid attendance was 13,257. So the Reds win the first game of the series, 9-6. Big bats, not very good pitching, but still it was enough to win it by 3. Reds 9 and the Mets 6. No game-winning RBI in that contest. The winning run scored as a result of an error by Rafael Santana, the Mets shortstop, one of 2 errors they made in the game. But then it's all downhill from there. These last 2 games I've got to report are losses, both by 1 run. The Mets have the best record in 1-run games in the league and probably in baseball, a percentage of nearly 700. On Friday evening, the 20th of July, the 15th anniversary of man's first landing on the moon, and the Mets came out on top in 11 innings, a 3-2 final score. The winning pitcher was reliever Jesse Orosco, 8-2 his record. He relieved Dwight Gooden, who went 9 innings, a 4-hit ball in that game. Orosco's now won as many games as Gooden has this season. In the last 2 years, Orosco's come up with 21 wins. He was the Mets' top winner last year in their last place season. He won 13 games and saved several other ones. He was, of course, an All-Star last year and this year, but did not pitch in the All-Star game a couple of weeks ago at San Francisco. But a back-to-back All-Star choices for Orosco. He was selected each of the last 2 years. He went 2 innings, allowed 2 hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts, and a walk to get his 8th win in 10 decisions. And keep in mind, he's also saved 19 this year, so that's 27 victories, you could say, combining saves and wins against only 2 defeats. Gooden did a good job. That was a good pitching matchup that night in an 8:20 start. That game was televised on ABC. And 2 fellas matched up there that were teammates at Class A Bowl last year at Lynchburg in the Mets organization. That is Dwight Gooden for the Mets and rookie right-hander and newcomer Jay Tibbs for the Cincinnati team. They combined for, 33 wins in the Carolina League last year, and they ran 1-3 in that league, an earned run average. Gooden at 250, Tibbs at 292. In between was another Lynchburg pitcher, Bettendorf, And so that was an interesting pitching matchup. Of course, Tibbs acquired in the Bruce Bereni deal last month. And those two fellows did not disappoint anyone in the stadium who were looking for good pitching. They combined for 17 innings, 10 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned, 3 walks, and some 13 strikeouts, combining both of their lines. Good 9-4, 2-1, 2 and 11. That is 2 runs, 1 earned, 2 walks, and 11 strikeouts. He's gone into double digits, I think something like 10 times already this year. He leads the league in Ks. Jesse Orozco came on, of course, got the victory. Jay Tibbs, a no decision, 8 innings. He allowed 6 hits, 2 runs, a good line for him. He remains 1-0, lowers his ERA to 2.30. He walked 1 and struck out 2. Bob Ochinko, 2 innings, 2 walks, no runs. Brad Leslie, the loser, his first decision, a third of an inning, a hit, and a run. He gave up the winning run to the Mets in the 11th inning, a game-winning hit for Keith Hernandez on a sacrifice fly to center, his 12th game-winning run batted in of the season. Ted Power went the final 2/3, a hit, no runs. Of course, well, he actually gave up the sac fly, but it was charged to Leslie, and he goes down to his first loss. And Leslie is now 0-3 lifetime in the majors. A 3-hour and 22-minute game, 18,860 on hand. And the paid attendance, 17,020. 3 runs, 8 hits, 2 errors, 5 left on for the Mets. The Reds had 2, 6, 0, and 7. RBIs by Cedeno and Oster for the Reds. Oster gets his first in some 9 days, his 16th of the year. Gary Reedus finally got another stolen base, his first since the 21st of June, almost exactly a month ago. His 32nd of the year, and that turned out to be the 100th stolen base for the Reds this year. Joining the Cardinals as the only 2 teams in the league in triple digits in stolen bases right now. Cedeno pilfered his 6th of the year in that game. Not enough. The stolen bases and the good pitching by Tibbs as the Mets go on and win in 11 behind their own good pitching. Gooden and Orozco 3-2. Once again is the final. Another lengthy contest. 3:22 to play that game. Another home run by Darryl Strawberry, second in as many days. His 14th of the year. And let me see. He touched up Jay Tibbs, and the Mets got on the board with that one in the second inning. Reds tied it with 1 in the second. The Mets got 1 in the 7th. The Reds tied it up with a run in the bottom half of the 8th inning. RBI bloop hit by Ron Oster. That sent it 2 extras, and the Mets win it on the sacrifice fly by Hernandez off of Power to make a loser out of Leslie in the 11th. 3-2 is how it winds up. The series was then even at 1-1. And the Mets went out in front in the series with a victory 2-1 last night, a 7:05 start on Saturday, the 21st of July. And it would have been nice if the Reds could have come up with a win on national TV on Friday, although it was a fine pitched ball game. And the Reds can't win the next day either, as the Mets come up with some more good pitching. They've been doing the job. A 3.30-plus team ERA, not bad at all. I figured it would be about 5 by this time during the season. I did not like that pitching staff at all when the year began. And, of course, you don't know about youngsters that they turn out to be okay. They can do things like the Mets staff is doing, and that is winning ball games. Darling's got a 7-game winning streak as he enters this start today. They got Sid Fernandez now 2-0. He was called up from AAA just recently. He went out and beat the Astros last week. And now he comes into Cincinnati for his first ever appearance against us, and he beats us. Of course, he's the former Dodger, coming over in part of the 4-player trade over the winter that sent Bob Baylor and Carlos Diaz to Los Angeles. Fernandez did a good job for 6 1/3, turned things over to Doug Sisk, who finished up to get his 14th save. Fernandez 2-0 now. Tom Hume takes the loss, and his record slips to 3 wins, 10 defeats, his 6th consecutive loss. The Mets had 2 runs, 8 hits, no errors, and left 7. The Reds a run, 6 hits, no errors, and left 6. The only Reds run came on a solo homer by Dave Parker to dead center field, his 9th homer of the year, and that's his second in 3 days, second in that series. He's hit 3 against New York this year. That gives him his 52nd RBI. Game-winning run batted in for Hubie Brooks of the Mets. Done a fine job at third base, batting over 300 for Davey Johnson this season. Reedus, another stolen base. Didn't have one in a month, and he gets him in back-to-back days, his 33rd of the season. The crowd was 27,655 last night to see the 2-hour and 24-minute Mets 2-1 win over the Reds, as the Reds fall to their, their 12th loss, make that their 13th loss in the last 15 games. Tom Hume had a pretty good outing last night. You can't really blame him for the defeat, even though he was charged with his 10th loss of the year. He allowed only 5 hits and 1 walk in 6 whole innings, and he allowed just 2 runs. He struck out 4 batters, but did not get a strikeout after the first 1 1/3. He struck out the first 4 batters he faced in the game, He struck out the side in the first and then got a man to fan in the second inning leading off, and that was all as far as the strikeouts are concerned. But still a pretty good line for Hume, 6.5, 2.2, 1-4. That's one of his better lines since he's gone into the rotation. His last 4 or 5 appearances in a row have been as a starter. His ERA entering that start last night was 6.20. He lowers that a little bit to 5.95. It's still sky high, but at least he, was on the right track last night with some good pitching. Unfortunately, couldn't break the losing streak, which now goes to 6. He has not had a win since beating the Cubs in a shutout 3-0 at Chicago on May the 25th, the only whitewashing the Reds pitchers have chalked up this year. He combined with Ochinko and Russell, got Ochinko and Power on that one. Speaking of Ochinko, he pitched also last night, and Jeff Russell also in relief. His first relief outing in a long time, but he only went 2 2/3 in his last start on Wednesday against the Phils and got bombed as he took his 3rd straight loss and 8th in 10 decisions. 8th in his last 10 decisions, that is. He's 4-11 on the year. He went 2 innings of shutout ball, Russell did, to finish it up. 3 hits, a walk, no strikeouts. Bob Ochinko, 1 inning and 1 strikeout. So we got some pretty good pitching in that game. Only a couple of walks given up in the 9 innings, an 8-hitter, and only 2 runs, no homers allowed. And the relievers, 3 innings, no runs, 1 walk, 3 hits. But, again, not enough to overcome the great pitching and just enough offense that the Mets had to win the Farmers' Night contest last evening. A lot of prizes given away before, during, and after the ball game, including a couple of vehicles, including a tractor. They were given away, of course. That's the annual Farmers' Night giveaway at Riverfront. The fans unable to see a victory. Mets win it by a run. Good crowd, too, over 27,500 to see the loss. So the Reds will be trying to split the series today. July 22nd action coming up from Riverfront. Reds against the Mets.
Reds have managed only 1 win on this homestand, and that was Thursday night. They were swept 3 straight by the Phils. They beat the Mets in the opener here, and New York has taken 2 straight 1-run decisions and lead in the 9th inning by 2 in this one. And another foul, this one rattling the screen behind the plate. 3 in San Diego, Tuesday and Wednesday night games, Thursday afternoon to finish that off. And then a night game in L.A. Friday, and day game Saturday and Sunday. That one hit into left field. Well, going back, Foster, a chance, it's gone. Home run left center, Gary Reedus, his 4th of the year, the first home run this season, given up by Jesse Orosco. After 53 1/3 innings, Jesse Orosco has finally thrown up a long one. And the Reds trail by 1 at 7-6. Ronnie Oster, he got the 2-run 7th off with a base hit. Takes a fastball up and away. So both of the Met relief aces have served up first homers of the year on this road trip. Mark Bailey got Doug Sisk in Houston. Gary Reedus gets Jesse Orosco here at Riverfront. This one fouled away, and it's 1-1. It has been a long time since Reedus has hit a home run, too. I'll tell you, since the 15th of May, when he homered off Dickie Knowles in Chicago, or rather here at Riverfront. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Ronnie upset over the call by Harry Wendelstedt. Now make that the 18th of May in St. Louis. Reedus homered off John Stuper. 1-2 pitch, and that's a ball low. Hit one off of Knowles on the 15th here. Came back 3 days later and homered off of Stuper in Busch Stadium, and that's his last home run. Well, you're talking about better than 2 months. 2-2 pitch. And a pop-up in the seats. A 1-run game, exactly as we had Friday night and as we had last night. It is that way here today, 7-6. Oster waiting on the break-even pitch. Here it comes. And strike 3 call. Ronnie's going to get his 2 cents worth in now. He was unhappy on strike 2 call, and maybe more so on strike 3. Danny Dreesen, who shot one out of here off the left-hander Gorman with one on in the 7th inning. Second time this season Dreesen has homered off of a left-handed pitcher. Among the 7 he has hit total. His other one coming off of Giant rookie Mark Grant. Ball to him. Now Doug Sisk will start to get ready for the Mets. Dreesen with a half-swing foul at the plate. One ball, 1 strike, 1 out, 1 in. Reds need still 1 or more. Missing away, 2-1. Swung on and popped in the air. Shallow right field. Chapman back. Strawberry coming. And the second baseman squeezes it. Out number 2. Well, the Reds are down to their final of 27. And the hitter is Dave Parker. David has bounced to second, walked, reached on a fielder's choice RBI, and popped up foul to third in the 7th inning. Wayne Walker on deck. Parker trying to keep things alive, and apparently Ron Oster or somebody still laying some verbal heat on Harry Wendelstedt. It's Oster. Ronnie coming up off the dugout bench and now stepping to the railing at the Reds dugout. He is still irate over being called out on strikes following Reedus' home run. Parker dribbles one along the third base line. Hubie Brooks has it. His running throw is in time, and that is that. 1 run, 1 hit for Cincinnati in the 9th inning, but it was not enough. The Mets make it 3 in a row as they defeat the Reds by 1, 7-6. We'll be back in a moment. Well, the Mets have made it a habit this season of scoring first. They did it today in the 2nd inning against Joe Price. A double to left center by Hubie Brooks, a wild pitch, and a later single by Mike Fitzgerald made it 1-0. But in the bottom of the 2nd inning, the Reds got a pair in off Ron Darling. Dwayne Walker's single moved up on a walk to Nick Esaski. Tom Foley's double to right center made it 2-1, and Dave Van Gorder's ground out, that tied it up, rather, the double by Foley. Van Gorder's ground out gave the Reds a 1-run lead at 2-1. Back came the Mets, however, in the 3rd to score twice. With 1 out, Kelvin Chapman got him going with a walk, and 1 out later, George Foster doubled to right field to tie the game up. Brooks got a base on balls. Jerry Martin then bounced one up the middle for a run-scoring single. The second Mets run of the inning, and they were in front by a score of 3-2. The Reds came back to tie it up in the 5th inning on a leadoff single by Reedus, a stolen base, and a later ground ball by Parker to second base. The Mets were unable to get the double play thanks to Danny Dreesen, who did his job on shortstop Rafael Santana. Reedus scored, and once again the game was even at 3-3. In the sixth inning, Brad Leslie took over for Joe Price, and Leslie could not find the strike zone. He walked the first man he faced, Mookie Wilson. Wilson then stole second, and when Leslie tried to pick him off, he threw one into center field, allowing Wilson to go to third. Kelvin Chapman followed with a walk. Strawberry flied out. Nobody was able to move, but then Foster singled into right center, making it 4-3. Brooks reached on a fielder's choice. Chapman scored, and it was 5-3. Again, the Reds had a comeback in mind. In the seventh inning, Tom Gorman now pitching. Ron Oster single to left field. Danny Dreesen homer to right, his seventh of the season. The game was all tied up again at 5-5. But in the eighth, Keith Cato in his second inning of work gave up an infield single to Chapman, and Darryl Strawberry took him out to left center, his 15th homer of the year, and the Mets led it 7-5. In the ninth inning, Gary Reedus led off and hit one out of here to left center field. The first home run that Jesse Orozco has given up all season long, but unruffled, Orozco retired the next three to nail down New York's 55th victory of the season. The Mets had 7 runs, 11 hits, and left 11. The Reds had 6 runs, 7 hits, 1 error, stranding 7. Tom Gorman, the winner in relief. He's now 2-0. 0-1 the record for the loser Keith Cato, and Orozco picks up his 20th save. The Reds are now done with the Eastern Division for a while. After an off day tomorrow, they'll be heading west to begin a 6-game road trip, 3 in San Diego, beginning on Tuesday night, followed by 3 over next weekend in Dodger Stadium. In the opener Tuesday against Dick Williams Ball Club, Mario Soto, after his 11th win of the season against Padre left-hander Tim Lawler. We'll have the pregame shows, followed by the play-by-play action on most of these same stations beginning at 9:35. Again, the final score today in a game that took 2 hours and 46 minutes to play before a crowd of 19,420. The Mets 7 and the Reds 6.
That was Marty Brenneman reporting from Riverfront on this 22nd day of July. Bad news again. Mets clip us by 1 run for the 3rd consecutive day. They win this series 3-1. And they take the seasonal series 9-3. That's the Reds' poorest record against the New York Mets since the Mets came into existence back in '62. It's the first time ever the Mets have been over 500 on a season against the Cincinnati Ball Club. And I tell you, they did it convincingly, too. The Mets did, winning, 8 of the last 9 against the Reds. That starts with the 5-game series at Shea just before the All-Star break. Mets won all of those and then take 3 of 4 in this series, so that's 1-8 for the Reds in the last 9 against that team. The Reds had won 2 of the first 3. They split the opening 2 games of the season against New York, and then won what turned out to be just a 1-game series, if you will, at Shea Stadium in early May. One of those games was rained out, and that brought about that long 5-game series earlier this month, and the 5-game series have not been kind to the Reds at all. The Reds are 0-15 in 3 such series going back to 1983. That's incredible. So the Reds finish up at 2-4 at Riverfront against the Mets team. The Reds lost 5 of the 6 at Shea, including, of course, the last 5 in a row. So not a very good homestand at all, or series. The Reds are able to win only 1 of the 7 games on this homestand, and you'll have to look back in the annals and see when the last time was the Reds had this poor a percentage, 143, on a homestand. The Reds had been playing pretty good ball, coming in at 20-17 at home, but they're now 21-23. That's under 500 now for the first time at home this season. And they were coming off a homestand. I think they beat the Expos 2 out of 3. And they had a pretty good homestand before that also. I think they won 5 of 6 on one of them. And, well, they swept one homestand, 6-0, earlier this season. That's the first time they've swept a homestand in many moons. But everything seems to be going downhill for the ball club, and has been ever since that 5-game series really with Atlanta, which started on May the 31st. The Reds had swept the Pirates 2 in late May at home, one of them on a big Brad Golden home run down the right field line in the 13th inning. Then Atlanta came in, and they swept us 5, and that really started the downturn for the Cincinnati team. The Reds now fall to, 16 games under the 500 mark, while the amazing New York Mets, who moved out in front of the Cubs by 2.5 today, they moved some 18 games over 500. This is really a mystery team, and it's a pleasant mystery, I guess, if you're a Mets fan. It's amazing that they've been doing what they've been doing, and you try to put your finger in and say this is it. This is the reason why the Mets have gone from a dead last place team in '83 to first place and a contender in '84. And I really don't know what to say. Well, I guess you'd have to say the good young pitching that they have developed within their own system, a lot of it. And, of course, they've acquired many of the good pitchers in trades as well. And, well, actually, most of them in trades when you look at it. Doug Sisk came from within their own system, but Jesse Orozco, their fine lefty reliever who picked up his 20th save today, he's a former Minnesota Twin product. Then you've got Walt Terrell and Ron Darling, who came over in the same trade from the Texas Rangers in April 2 years ago for Lee Mazzilli, one of the worst trades I guess the Rangers have ever made, and those people knew it at the time. And it was just a matter of time until Terrell and Darling started to pitch effectively, and they have with the Mets this season. It's all gelled together. Darling's got a 7-game winning streak, kept alive today with a no decision, and would have been kept alive anyway, of course, had he got a decision, because the Mets won the game. So has a 7-game winning streak, the longest for a Mets pitcher since 1973, I believe Marty said, when Tom Seaver, now with the White Sox, won, I think, 8 straight. And Darling has been doing a fantastic job. He was at 3-3 at one point, and now has run off 7 straight. Then you've got Tom Gorman, left-handed relievers, doing a pretty good job. He came from the Montreal Expos in that Joel Youngblood deal a couple of years ago. And let me see, of course, there's Sid Fernandez, who's now in the rotation, and he's 2-0. He came from the Dodgers. And so a lot of them have been acquired in trades, but some of them have been grown by the Mets through the farm system as well. And they've all gelled together and played like a team this season, and they've won 55 games to this point. Their winning percentage is now almost at .600 for the year, with the best record now in the National League. And that is amazing. If someone had been asleep throughout this whole season, when the year started, and then woke up today and saw the Mets in first place, they'd think somebody had been turned the standings upside down or something, because the Mets have finished last each of the last 2 seasons, like their counterparts today, the Cincinnati Reds. And the Reds right now looks like they're going to be dropping into the basement any time, only a game and a half ahead of the Giants, and the way we're playing, we could be falling into 6th at any moment in the next few days. Hopefully that won't happen. We'd like to finish out of the cellar for the first time since '81, when they had the best record in the major leagues. Now, the Mets have also got some good offense this season, fine outfield that shapes up with George Foster in left, Darryl Strawberry in right, and in between them is fine speedster and Mookie Wilson, who's a good fly chaser. 0 for 4 today, though, for Mookie, but he's having a pretty good year. He's up around 300, around 290. Foster's starting to swing the bat better. In this game, he had 2 hits. Strawberry is really putting it together now. He had 8 hits and 18 at-bats in this 4-game series, including 3 home runs. He's now got 15 on the year, and he loves to hit against the Cincinnati Reds. He's had 2 or 3 against Mario Soto this year, including 1 on opening day. So he's had at least 4 of his 15 homers. Well, to be exact, 4 of his 15 at Riverfront Stadium this season. I think he might have had a couple there last year as well when he pounded 26, went on to win the National League Rookie of the Year award, and he is just a fine player. Batted .400 in this game. That's going to up his average to around .275 on the year. He's now over the half-century mark in runs batted in, and George Foster got to 50 with a couple that he picked up today. Hubie Brooks has been outstanding at third, hitting over .300. The double play combination is gelled together, and of course their new manager has been one of the big plus factors for the team. Davey Johnson, the rookie pilot who had never managed a big league team before. He was at Tidewater last year, and of course he got a look-see at these young ball players that he is now managing on the major league level, and that might have helped him when preparing for this season. He did not like Jose Oquendo, apparently, because of his weak stick. He put Ron Gardenhire at shortstop, and he's done a fine job. And the second baseman, Wally Backman, whom Johnson is very, very high on, has just done a fantastic job in that leadoff spot for the Mets this season. Wilson normally bats second, but today they had Kelvin Chapman at second base. And he's kind of was a mystery to the Mets a few years ago. Chapman, as far back as 1979, was touted as the second baseman of the future, but it never worked out that way. But still, he's hung around the organization somewhat surprisingly. And today was on 4 straight times after grounding out in the first inning. So he picked up where Backman left off in this series. Backman a cog in those 3 previous Mets wins. So it's just been, I guess, a team effort strengthened mainly by the pitching. That's been the glue, I think, that has binded the ball club, that pitching staff, which I did not particularly like at all at the season's beginning, but have to eat crow now because those Mets pitchers are proving everybody wrong, and they have done a fantastic job with a 3.32 team ERA. You look at the Reds I thought had better pitching than the Mets when the season started. Reds at 4.42, if you can believe it. Team ERA a 4.42, dead last in Major League Baseball, and the team batting average slipped below 240 today. 239, that's exactly where they ended up last year, and I imagine that's worst in baseball. I know it's worst in the National League. But the Mets have also piped in some of these youngsters, such as Sisk and Fernandez. and also Darling and Terrell and Ed Lynch and Tim Leary and Tom Gorman, a good pitching staff. And they've weeded out some of the veterans who were on the team at the beginning of the year, and one of them, speaking of Mike Torres, started the opening day game and got bombed in an 8-1 Reds win. And that is Torres, who has now signed a AAA contract with the A's, and he's at Tacoma. They've also released, during these past few months, such veterans as Dick Tidrow and Craig Swan. And Swan is now with the Angels and on the disabled list again, as usual, because of that rotator cuff problem. And I don't know where Tidrow is right now, but those three veterans are now all gone, and they've brought up the kids, and they're doing it with this young pitching, and it's really great to see. I hope the Mets go on and win the thing, although I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. The way they're playing now, well, maybe just the Reds bring out the best in everybody. They have been of late. Okay, let's take a look at my data now for the 1984 season. Another loss, this being loss number 3 in my last 4 scored and number 2 in a row. The Reds are 3-5 in my last 8 and have lost 6 of my last 10. However, I've won 3 of 6, 6 of 12, and 10 of the last 17, in case you want to know that. This is game 23 for the year. For my records, 11 wins and 12 losses now for a .478 winning percentage. 1-3 finishing out against the Mets. 4-5 against that team back through last year, including 3-2 last season, 2-0 at Riverfront. This year against the Mets, 1-2 at Cincinnati, 0-1 at Shea. In games at home, 3-6 against the East, 8-6. The Reds now through with the East for a while. And this wraps up season's play with the Mets, the third club the Reds have closed out against. They earlier closed out against the Expos and the Phillies. And the Expos on the road and the Phillies at home. They finished with those two teams now for the year. In one-run games, my record is still pretty good at 6-5. In extras, 2-2. And since the All-Star game, 1-2. And against left-handers now 5-3, with I think 3 straight losses there. In the month of July, 2 wins and 3 defeats. And again, 11-12 on the season to make for a 210 and 155 lifetime record in Reds games. And that goes back to my first game, which was some 9 years ago. This month, on July 17th of 75, and 210 wins have come and gone. 55 games over 500, that's a .575 winning percentage for 365 Reds games. 143 wins, 115 losses on cassette tape, that's .554 in that category. Let's look at the umpires. Behind the plate, Harry Wendelstadt. The umpire at first today was Terry Tata. At second base, Charlie Williams. At third base, Jerry Dale. Actual starting time was 2:16 for the game, a minute behind the scheduled start, and it's very hot in Cincinnati now. Normally the case in July. And getting to the dog days now. High forecast today for around 90 degrees. It's listed in the papers in the upper 90s. I don't think that's right. Game time temperature was 88 degrees at 2:15 Eastern Time. Low tonight going down to 65. Very hot conditions, but not quite as humid as in the past few days. Kind of hazy and sunshine overhead. No clouds really in sight to spoil the day for the fans that turned out to see another Reds loss. Almost 19,500 saw the game. Not too bad. And not a pleasant homestand at all. And it's really kind of a shame for the fans. It'd be nice if we could at least play good at home. The Reds had been doing that. Not really a good road record at all. 20-34. And, well, they had that record when they were 20-17 at home. So it looked like they might go on and make it a pretty good home season. But with this homestand, it might discourage a lot of the fans who had been coming out to see him. So we might see a drop in attendance on the next stand because they go 1-6 on this one, and now we're 2 under at the home yard this season. And these last 3 losses have been tough ones, all by 1 run. And today, got a home run in the 9th by Gary Reedus that I played earlier, but that was not quite enough to win, as the next 3 went out in order against their fine lefty reliever Jesse Orozco, who picks up another save. He's been incredible this year, and is a 2-time All-Star now. Okay, we'll take a look at the lineups here for the New York Mets. Mookie Wilson leads off in center field. Mook hitting at .286. He's pounded 6 home runs, and he's knocked in 30. Not bad at all. And, of course, he's not been leading off all the time. Backman's been up there, as I mentioned. Kelvin Chapman at second base batting second. And Kelvin's been doing a good job in a part-time role. .328, backing up the likes of Gardenhire and Brooks and Backman. And Kelvin with no homers, he's driven in 5. Hitting third and right field is Darryl Strawberry. He can bat third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. No matter where you put him, he's going to swing the lumber with authority. 14 homers entering this game, 50 runs batted in, a .272 average. Those marks would be much worse had they not played the previous 11 games in the seasonal series against the Reds, because Strawberry must be hitting around .350 against Reds pitching. with, I'd say, 15 or so RBIs and now 6 homers against the Reds on the year, including one today, a game-winning shot in the 8th inning to the opposite field, his second opposite field homer of the series. Batting fourth in left field is former Red George Foster. He's starting to pick up a little bit, up to 248, 13 homers, 48 RBIs, still really only a shadow of what he was when he was in his prime with the Reds. Recall some 7 years ago when he won the MVP. His numbers at this point of the season would look a lot better than that, en route to the fine .320 average, 52 home runs and 149. That's right, 149 RBIs. That's almost, impossible to believe now. There's someone knocking in that many runs. Maybe that Strawberry's got potential to do it. If he can get some people on in front of him, and this Mets team looks like it's developing into one that will be a good one for the future, with those top 2 hitters getting on base, Strawberry knocking in some runs. Maybe he can challenge the 149 that Foster had in 77. That was just a super year all around for Foster, but not, ironically, for the team. Reds didn't do well at all that year, finishing some 10 games behind the Dodgers. Only 14 over 500 for the year, but boy, we'd take that now any day. 14 over, it would be nice for a ball club which is now 16 games under the 500 mark on the year. But Foster just hasn't really put it together as a Met. Last year he did knock in 90 with a late surge. He knocked in only 70 his first year in 1982 after being traded in that awful deal that the Reds made, getting Jim Kern, Alex Trevino, and Greg Harris in the deal. And you look at where those people are now. Trevino's with Atlanta. The Reds have accepted cash, by the way, in that April 24th trade. Could not decide on a player. Tony Brizolaro was hurt. The Reds hemmed and hawed, finally decided to take cash. And Jim Kern, of course, is now struggling with the Philadelphia Phillies with about a 4-figure ERA. And he's been with a couple of teams since leaving Cincinnati in August 2 years ago. And, of course, Greg Harris is playing at Indianapolis in the Expos organization after he was waived there late last September. So we got some cash for him. But Foster's still doing it with the Mets. And it'd be better to have 48 RBIs and 13 homers rather than nothing at all, which is what we show right now for George Foster. And the trade was only made a couple of years ago. That's a shame. One of the worst trades engineered by Mr. Wagner. Still, you would have to admit Foster's figures are low for what you know he can do, but he is, I guess, what you would say, past his prime being 77 when he won the MVP, and then he continued that to 78, led the league in homers and RBIs again, but then started going downhill in 79 and after. And so George gets to 50 RBIs today, so they've got a couple players with 50 or more. Actually, they got 3 with 50 or more. To look up Hernandez here. Yes, Keith Hernandez, the first baseman who was not in the starting lineup today. Rather, Jerry Martin was there. Hernandez has knocked in 55, Foster 50, and Strawberry with his 2 has driven in 52. So that's pretty good run production for the middle part of the lineup. And, of course, they got that pitching to take care of that end of it. So that is the reason they're in first place. Hitting fifth is at third base, Hubie Brooks. Having a sensational year, 10 homers, doubled his previous lifetime seasonal high, 311 average and 38 RBIs. Hitting sixth at first base is Jerry Martin. Only the third game he's ever played at first base in the major leagues. Last time he played first was September of 1976 when he was with the Phillies, I think Marty said. And he was the jack of all trades as a super sub back with the Phillies in those years when they had the great bench. Martin, of course, was with Kansas City last year and was released by them. Of course, he was involved in the drug problems, along with a couple of his teammates, Mookie Wilson and Vida Blue, and also Willie Aikens. And Martin was not eligible to play until the 16th of May this year. Finally got a chance to play. The Mets picked him up, signed him to a free agent contract, and he's been a sub for their team this year, coming off the bench only to bat about 100 with 1 homer and 1 run batted in. But he starts at first base today against the Reds lefty Joe Price. Hitting seventh, the catcher Mike Fitzgerald. He's a rookie, hitting at .253. Star of the game was Joe Nuxhall today. He's had 19 RBIs, 1 homer. Batting eighth, at shortstop, is a former Yankee and Cardinal product, Rafael Santana. 100 average, no home runs for him. Batting ninth, Ron Darling, 100 average. 4 for 40 with a double and 1 run batted in. I'll get to the Reds lineup on side B of this cassette, so stick around. Back with more information concerning this ball game of July 22. I'm just about to read off the Reds batting order here and have a look at these averages for these 9 guys that started this wrap-up to the 4-game series at Riverfront and the wrap-up to the 12-game seasonal series against the East Division leading New York Ball Club, having just a sensational, I guess you would call it a miracle season this year, considering where most people predicted them, including myself, which of course was dead last in the East for the 3rd straight year. and they've surprised everybody. It's been the story, I guess, in baseball. They've been the surprise team of all the 26 in the major leagues. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the Cubs might be second. I would have them finishing 5th. I did in preseason. And they're in second place, only 2.5 games back, and we're in late July now. So those two teams have been the Cinderella teams here in '84. Reds closing out a 7-game, 2-series homestand today. They were 0-3 against the Phils, 1-3 against the Mets, so not very good, hoping for better things as they head out on the road tomorrow. An open date tomorrow, first since the All-Star break, and they'll be flying out west to Jack Murphy Stadium to take on Dick Williams' first-place Padres, so they have to play one first-place team right after the other one, so it doesn't get much easier. And the Pods have built themselves a pretty big lead in that Western Division. They continue to win. They split a doubleheader today with the Pirates. The Pirates really starting to play the games now. I think this is a stretch. The Pirates have something like 15 games in a 9 or 10 day period. They played 2 doubleheaders this weekend with San Diego. Pittsburgh did, and the Padres split with the Bucks today. That made the Reds lose a half game, so Cincinnati falls to an all-time high this year of 16 full games behind San Diego. I'll try to eat away some of that ground in a 3-game series starting Tuesday. That'll be the beginning of a 6-game West Coast 2-city road trip that'll also take the Reds into the friendly confines of Dodger Stadium before they trek back home to start up their longest homestand of the year and the longest in many seasons. A 2-week stay covering 13 or 14 games, including a makeup doubleheader on August 10. And they'll have a big ceremony August the 11th when Johnny Bench's uniform number 5 is retired in pregame ceremonies before the Reds-Astros game on the 11th of next month. And that'll be interesting. They're going to put a plaque of him outside the ballpark, outside Gate 13. Be interesting to see that. And, of course, that, I guess, would kind of remind you of last year's Johnny Bench night, which was also before a game against the Astros last September 17th when Bench was honored, then hit a big home run, which turned out to be his last as a major leaguer. And so we still have more Johnny Bench festivities coming up this season. And Johnny was at the ballpark the other night talking to Al Michaels and the crew at ABC, and that was during the Reds-Mets game on Friday. Reds losing that ball game by a run on a Keith Hernandez fly ball. And Johnny has been doing a lot of golfing in the Cincinnati area, and of course he's been taking care of business out in California as well and taping his baseball bunch show, so he's got a lot of things to do outside of baseball as well. Let's take a look at this Reds order. Gary Reedus leads off in left field, and can you believe it? He had another home run today. Another homer. I can't remember his last one. We had to look back in the archives and find it. As his first home run since the middle of May against the Cardinals, only a second RBI since that date in May. And that's incredible. He had one in the ninth off of a pitcher who has not given up one all year. That homer was his second hit of the game, so his batting average goes up from .263 at game time. He had been only 1 for his previous 15 entering this game. He came into the contest with 9 RBIs and 3 homers. Batting second at second base, Ron Oster. He's starting to hit the ball better of late. Comes in with an 8-game hitting streak, having gone 7 for his last 17. He's batting a season's high .226. His previous high before this past hot surge for him was at .219 back on the 19th day of May. And, of course, he got off to an 0-for-7 start and 1 for his first 24, so he could not raise it above 200 for a long time, but finally is getting it up there to, well, near respectability, although it's still very, very low. We'd like to see him hit at least, I'd like to see him hit around 260 before the year ends, but that might be too much. 226 right now, but he's hot. He's raised that several points in the last few days. He has not yet hit a home run this year, and that's really hard to believe because he had a career-high 11 last season, coming off a season, I think, in which he had 9 the year before. He's driven in 16 runs, and that's very low, too. He led the team last year. Hitting third at first base, Danny Dreesen. And Dreesen at .284. He's been a fairly consistent hitter of late. And the trade rumors have kind of calmed down concerning him and Dave Concepcion since the Phillies left town. It was rumored that possibly Dreesen might be going elsewhere along with Davey, and the Reds might be getting some more pitching. Well, I really don't know who. We didn't really hear who we were going to get. We just heard that we were going to be shipping out some veterans, but apparently that's not the case. That's just rumors which do crop up from time to time, especially when a team is going through bad times. So Dreesen is still a Red, and he's doing a pretty good job this year. .284 with 6 home runs, 26 RBIs. Hitting fourth and right field is our offense, Dave Parker. He leads the team in just about every category. And with the bat in his hand, he's been dangerous this year, and he's got a chance to win the Comeback Player of the Year award. Enters this game with a 5-game hitting streak. He leads the team in that department, too, hitting streaks. Earlier had a 12-gamer. That was stopped on the 12th of May when Soto had his one-hitter against the Cards. Parker, no hits, but an important sacrifice fly to give the Reds a run in that 2-1 squeaker. 273 batting average for Parker. That's one of its lowest points this year. He has gone only 7 for his last 41 entering the game. That's 171 during that period. But still has been very consistent, has been driving in some runs even though he has been in that slump. And such as today, he was without a hit, but he drove in a run with a force out to give him a club-leading 53rd RBI. And leads the team by some 18 over his nearest competitor, David Concepcion, who has 35. Parker now leads the team in homers by 2 with his total of 9. And he's had, I think, 3 against the Mets this season. He had one to dead center earlier in this series for his 9th of the year. He had 12 homers last year, 69 runs batted in, I think, was his total. And I think he's going to top those figures this season. He batted .279 last year. He had 10 game winners. He's got 9 of those this season. That leads the team by 5. He leads the team in doubles by 3 with a total of 17. Leads in total bases with 146. Leads in at-bats with 373. And in base hits with 102 safeties. And really in batting average, I guess you would call him second behind Dreesen because Walker really wouldn't count because he's only got 143 at-bats. He's batting .308 on the year. So Parker would be second behind Dreesen's .284. And of players with more than 225 at-bats, he'd be first on the team in batting average with the .273. So you can see he's having a pretty good first year as a Cincinnati Red. And he got off to a fairly slow beginning. He was batting only about .225 through April and has really poured it on since then. So coming into the game with 52 RBIs, keep in mind last year's season's high, and the highest mark for a Reds player since 1981 is 58. That was owned by Ron Oster. And several players have had 57 each of the last couple of years, but Parker's undoubtedly going to pass them up. I'd like to see him possibly get up to 85 to 90. I think he could do it if he gets hot later this season. I'd like to see him end with about 15 homers, a .290 average, and 90 runs batted in, and 15 game winners. How's that for a goal for Parker? Hitting fifth in center field is Walker, topping the team with that .308 average, the only player on the team to bat .300. And he's had 7 home runs, has driven in 21, has been a fine player this year. Why in the world he doesn't play more is a question that could be asked, along with why they don't play Cesar Cedeno more often. His batting, well, he is in a dreadful slump now, though. He just kind of calmly went into a slump, and nobody noticed it, I think. Cedeno, .263, only 1 hit in his last 22 at-bats. His average has been lowered from .297 during that .045 dry spell for him. And Cedeno's knocked in now 23 runs, has hit 6 homers. And Walker is leading the team in slugging average at .552. Hitting 6th at third base is Nicky Saski. And Nick, having hit in 6 of his last 8 games, has upped his average over 200. First time I've reported that in a while. 201 for Saski. With now 7 homers, second on the team. And he's knocked in 31 runs, third on the team. That's not too bad. And he's had himself 3 game-winning hits also, 10 doubles and a couple of triples. And he's stolen 1 base. Hitting 7th at shortstop is Tom Foley. Dave Concepcion, not starting today, but he came in late in the game and made a fine play in the field. Foley, who can also do it in the field with the best of them, at .259. It's somewhat of a dip also in his batting marks, but overall he's been doing a good job. It raises his average to .260 today. And he's had 3 home runs in this, his second year with the team, 21 RBIs. He only had 9 last year. Hitting 8th is the catcher and newcomer Dave Van Gorder. He's hitting 4 of his last 6 entering this game, batting .263 on the year with 5 hits, all singles. He's knocked in 1 run, no homers. Batting 9th, Joe Price, the left-handed pitcher from Inglewood, California, 27 years of age. He was born in November of 1956 in California, and he is now in his, 5th year. Now, this is his 4th full year with the team. He came up in June of 1980 and did a good job with a .350-plus earned run average. And he won 7 of 10 decisions. This season, he's lost 7 of 10 decisions with a .474 ERA entering the game, a .148 batting average with 4 base hits and 27 trips. He's walked a couple of times with 5 sacrifice bunts. He struck out only 8 times, not too bad. He's also driven in 2 runs. Doesn't have any long balls, but he does have a double or 2, and he's got 1 2-base hit. So left-hander Joe Price against right-hander Ron Darling, a couple of not-so-old guys. Price, a 5-year veteran, 27 years of age. Darling, in his second year Actually, I guess this would be his rookie season. He only pitched a few games last year, was 1-3, I think, and 5 starts. He's a 23-year-old right-hander from Honolulu, and it's quite ironic. The Reds face Honolulu natives in back-to-back days. When's the last time that would have happened? That maybe has never happened. The Reds facing natives of Honolulu in back-to-back games because lefty Sid Fernandez is from that city, and we faced him and lost to him last night, and now Darling, who was born in Hawaii, faces us today. He's undefeated in his career against the Reds at 2-0. He's a 6'3" 23-year-old with a 7-game winning streak. And so he's been tough on the people, on all the teams in the last few months. He hasn't lost in months. Top of the first inning, let's take a look at the action for the Mets. Against Price, Mookie Wilson went down swinging on a 3-2 pitch. Kelvin Chapman grounded out to second. Darryl Strawberry came up with a 2-out single into center field. But I was going to say the veteran. He plays like a veteran, but the sophomore, I guess I want to say, second-year man, the sophomore jinx certainly hasn't struck him. In fact, he's getting better rather than going downhill in his second year, something I guess Gary Reedus can't say. Reedus, a rookie last year, had a pretty good season, but this year falling on hard times, not playing a lot either, although he is third in the league in stolen bases. But Strawberry has his 2-out single into center field to keep his fine hitting alive against the Reds. He, I think, possibly has hit in every game he's played against Cincinnati this season. He's hit the Reds that well this year. In just about every game, anyway. George Foster, a ground ball third base to first base to win the inning. No runs, a hit, and they leave one. In the bottom half of the first, Gary Reedus opens it against Darling with a base on balls on a full count delivery. And then Ron Oster hits a fly ball into left field, caught near the line by Foster. Then Reedus is nailed on a steal attempt. That's only the 5th time he's been caught stealing this season. He's thrown out 2-6, and the catcher that got him is a rookie, Mike Fitzgerald. He gets him at second. The putout goes to Santana. A rookie connection there. Santana was with the Yankees. He was traded over to the Cardinals and then became a Met, I think earlier this year or possibly last season, but he was not on the team on opening day. 2 down for Dan Dreesen. He draws a walk on a 3-0 pitch. Dave Parker grounds out to the right side 4-3 to win this inning. No runs, no hits, 1 runner left on. The Mets take a quick lead in the top half of the second inning. They get the run in with 1 out. There was a leadoff double into left center by Huey Brooks. Then on the first pitch, Jerry Martin hit a ground ball to shortstop. I've not scored Martin in a game in a long time. Of course, he's been around. He's a journeyman. Of course, not normally playing at first base. As I mentioned, only the 3rd time he's ever been there in his life. And he's an outfielder by trade. A pretty good defensive center fielder, indeed he is. He was with the Cubs. He was with the Phillies for several years. With the San Francisco Giants, I think, a while. With the Kansas City Royals. And now with the Mets. So he's been around the block a few times. He grounds out 6-3 on the first pitch here. Brooks holds at second. Then Brooks moves up to third on a Price wild pitch. And the man scores on a single into left center field for rookie Mike Fitzgerald, his 20th run batted in. Rafael Santana bounces into a 6-4 force play. Oster could not get the pivot away in time. And Darling then hit a seed back to the pitcher. Price luckily able to shield his body with the glove. He picked it off on the fly to end the inning. 1 run, a couple of hits with 1 man left on. Now we go to the bottom half of the second inning. The Reds counter the Mets run with 2 of their own, and they take a lead. A single into center field by Walker on a 3-2 pitch starts it off. As Dwayne continues his pretty consistent hitting this year, he's been up over 300 just about all year. Nicky Saskey then draws a walk. That was on a 3-2 pitch, so we've got him going now. First and second, nobody out. The next 2 guys are responsible for these 2 runs. Let's listen in and hear how the Reds score a pair.
Swings and lines one over second base into right center field. It finds a gap. It's going to get Walker in. Here comes Esaski around third. He gets the stop sign. A double for Foley. It really looked like Esaski might have been able to score on that ball. Maybe not.
Hardly a bit of gamble. And with nobody out, you don't gamble. 2 outs, you gamble.
Be that as it may, the Reds tie it up. Foley hit a pitch down, and he hit a screamer over the leaping Chapman at second base. That ball really took off. Strawberry could not cut it off. It went all the way to the wall, scoring Walker, moving Nick to third, and Foley strikes again as the Reds tie it up. Here's Dave Van Gorder. He fouls it back. He bounces to the right side. That's going to score the run from third, Esaski, and the Reds lead it 2-1. Foley stays at second base.
Well, a couple of the youngsters got the job done here in the second inning. Tom Foley with a rocket shot over the second baseman's head, and that got to the fence in a hurry. A double to right center for Foley. That gives Tom his 22nd run batted in of the year. That's his 6th 2-base hit. And that came with nobody out. The third straight batter in the inning to reach base, and the next man makes the first out of the inning, but it gets a run in. As Esaski was held at third base by Coach Joe Sparks, and then he comes in, he trots home on a 4-3 ground ball hit by Dave Van Gorder that you heard. And for VG, that's his second run batted in of the year at his 9th Major League RBI. And the man stayed at second base, Foley. And Joe Nuxhall later explained why he stayed at second. It's because that Esaski did not break immediately, and Foley didn't want to take a chance at there being 2 men at third and possibly being doubled off there. And my heavens, that might have been a triple play. You never know if something had happened and Esaski was all confused for some reason about which way to go. And if he'd have stayed and Foley had gone up, they might have gotten everybody out. So no sense in taking a chance there. And so Foley stayed at second base. It really didn't matter anyway. The next two men don't even get it out of the infield. Foley's at second, 2 in. Reds lead 2-1 on the Van Gorder grounder. And Price then pops one up to second base. And then Reedus on a 3-2 pitch looked at strike 3. He was not happy at all with the Wendelstedt call, but it stood. That's the only K that Darling had in the game. Ron Darling, not really uncommon for him. He suffered with some control problems. He walked 7 batters today. He walked 6 in an earlier appearance against the Reds this season. But still, he's undefeated with a pretty good ERA. An excellent ERA at just over 1 against the Reds this year, even though he's walked a ton of people. So that's a credit to his pitching. He was able to rise to the occasion and get the outs when needed in these 3 games against the Reds this year. And 2 runs, 2 hits, no errors, 1 left. The first runs, by the way, we've scored off this guy Darling on the season. He had pitched a total of 16 consecutive scoreless innings against the Reds, but that's over now with 2 runs on a couple of hits in the second. But that lead doesn't last very long. It is short-lived indeed, as the Mets score a pair of their own to take a 3-2 lead in the top half of the third inning in this seesaw game. They send 8 men to the plate here against Price. A strikeout swinging of Wilson, but then Chapman draws a walk. Strawberry goes down swinging, so it's a 2-out rally. There's a double flare into right field hit by George Foster, his 17th double of the year. That scores a man all the way from first Chapman. First time of 3 that he's going to cross that plate today. So Foster's on with a big 2-out double. That gives him his 49th RBI. Then there's an intentional walk to Brooks after they had already had a couple of balls on him. Then Martin had a single into center field. That gives him just his 2nd RBI, his first that's not on a homer. And scoring a run there is George Foster. Going around to third is Brooks. Going 2-2 on the throw to third from center field is Martin. So 2nd and 3rd, 2 down. And, well, the game is now in the hands of the Mets. They got a lead now, 3-2. Then there's an intentional walk to Mike Fitzgerald to load him up for light-hitting, 100 batting Rafael Santana. He hits a fly ball into center field. Now, if he'd have hit a grand slam there, I think all 19,420 of the fans would have got out of their seats and gone home after that third inning, intentionally walking Fitzgerald to get to the weak-hitting Santana. And that would be just like the Reds to give up a grand slam to a guy like that. That's happened in the past, but luckily here, no, it didn't. 2 runs, 2 hits, no errors, 3 men left on. And they've stranded 5 in the first 3 innings, but they lead it by the score of 3-2. Bottom half of the third, the Reds get a 2-out, 4-pitch walk to Dave Parker. That followed an Oster fly ball to left field and a Dreesen ground ball to second. With a runner on, Walker grounded out to first base to end this. So 1 runner left on, nothing else in the third. Top half of the 4th inning, Mets trying to expand their lead. Joe Price only went 5 in the game, so this is his next to last frame. He punched out 5 batters, and 3 of those belonged to Mookie Wilson. As Wilson went down swinging here with a runner on and none out. In this 4th, Darling leads off the frame with an infield single to shortstop on a 3-2 pitch, his 5th hit of the season. Wilson then goes down for the 3rd straight time. Chapman walks on 4 straight pitches, 1st and 2nd for Strawberry. On the first pitch to him, he foul-popped one to the catcher, Dave Van Gorder. Then Foster bounced into a forced play to get Chapman 4-6. No runs, a hit. They left a couple on, so that's 7 men stranded through 4 frames. They left 11 on in the first 6 innings, but none in the last 3 innings, and that's when they did their real damage in winning the game. They had 2 runs, 2 hits, none left in the final 3, and that's when the game was won. So they got them all in. They got the ones in they needed to anyway. Although they were retired in order in 2 of those 3 innings. We'll have to give the Reds some credit there. And they're really the only 2 batters that hurt us. Well, in those final 3 innings, well, it cost us the game. 9 of 11 were retired. Actually, 10 of the last 12 were set down by Reds pitching. That's kind of interesting. That was after a walk to Heap in the 6th inning, but those 2 men that got on both scored, and that won the game for the Mets. Well, now we're trekking on to the bottom half of the 4th inning. The Reds get another walk. This guy Darling walked a man in each inning that he worked. He walked 2, then 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1 again. That should have totaled 6. So he worked 6 innings, and he walked 7 in the 6 innings. In the 4th, we get a leadoff walk to Esaski on a 3-2 delivery. Second straight time he's done that. Foley fly ball left field. Van Gorder pop up to second base. Price on an 0-0 pitch at a check swing ground ball to first base. And Martin took it himself, so he could not get Esaski around. No runs, no hits, 1 left, just like the 3rd. The top half of the 5th inning, final inning for Price. They get a 2-out rally going here with back-to-back singles off the bats of Mike Fitzgerald and Rafael Santana. After Brooks had a ground ball to shortstop, Martin went down swinging. Then Fitzgerald had a single into left center. Santana singled into straightaway left. And Darling on the first pitch had a pop-up, actually a fly ball into right field. Parker made the catch. No runs, a couple of hits. They wasted 2 more base runners, leave 2 more on base. 9 left through 5 innings. Bottom half of the 5th, the Reds get a run in, and they tie up the game at 3-3. And Dave Parker gets the RBI here. To start it off is a Gary Reedus first pitch single into center field, and his speed pays off. And so often when he's in the lineup, he's going to score some runs, and it happens here. A stolen base for Reedus, then. That's his first in 2 tries in the game, and his 34th in 39 attempts on the season. He's been 87% successful. Those were the only 2 attempts on the day for the Reds. The Reds now 102 of 144 in stolen bases, 708 percentage, with Reedus, of course, setting the pace way ahead of Milner, who has 18, and he's on the disabled list with a hepatitis problem, and don't know when he's going to return. So Reedus gets on, leads off the inning, steals second. It's an automatic double almost when you got him on. Oster then flies out to dead center, deep center, and Reedus, alert base running, tags up and moves to third base. A good play later in the inning because he turns out to score on a force play. Otherwise, he might not have been in. So runner at third now, 1 out. Dreesen draws the base on balls, and then Parker gets the run in.
Parker grounds right side. He's got to hurry. Chapman goes to Santana. They cannot get the double play. Danny does his job. He takes Santana out of the picture at second base, forcing the Mets shortstop to hang on to the baseball, and Reedus comes across with a tie and run. Parker gets his 53rd. Here's Walker.
So Parker now just 5 RBIs away from last year's season-high figure, which Oster owned at 58. And this force play gets the man in. He does not extend his hitting streak to 6 in a row, but this at the time is a big RBI, although it doesn't come on a hit. As he avoids hitting to into the double play, Dreesen takes out the shortstop. It's a 4-6 force play. Had they turned the DP, of course, no run would have scored. It would have been the 3rd out. And as it is, Reedus does come in. His good speed pays off once again. The stolen base and then moving up to third on the fly ball is so important. And we need that guy in that lineup every day and producing. And we also need Milner. Those are 2 of the big reasons why the Reds have fallen apart in these last few months. We don't have the speed burners up at the top of that order. 2 guys that I just love to watch in that outfield and on the base pads, and they haven't been there doing much. They've only had a handful of steals since mid-May, really. And, of course, Milner down with hepatitis. Nothing much you can do about that. Reedus has been bothered by some nagging injuries also. His whole team has been plagued with some injuries of late. And at least we got Reedus back in there, and he does his thing in this 5th. And then the inning was over as Walker hit a fly ball into center field. 1 run, 1 hit, 1 left. The game is tied through 5 at 3-3. That tie isn't up there very long. 2 runs for the Mets on 1 hit in the top half of the 6th inning as they send 7 men to the plate against Brad Leslie, who's now on the mound. Mookie Wilson a walk, and then he steals a base, his 27th of the year. He moves up to third on a throwing error by pitcher Leslie. And there's a walk on 4 straight pitches to Chapman. 3rd straight time he has been passed. Strawberry pops one up to shortstop. And on that pop-up, the runner at first, Chapman, went to second base. They were at first and third, then Chapman tagged up, went to second on the pop-up that was caught in shallow left by Foley. Good base running. Then 1 run scores on a single into right center by Foster. That breaks the tie. That gives him a 4-3 lead on Foster's 50th RBI of the year. Chapman was stopped at third on that play, but then he scored on a 4-6 force hit in 2 by Brooks, his 39th run batted in. They can't get the double play, and the Mets lead by a couple at 5-3. Then a pinch hitter for Martin. Danny Heap draws a walk. Then Leslie finally ends this bad inning for him with a Mike Fitzgerald ground ball to second base. 2 runs, a hit, 1 error, 2 left. Both runs turn out to be earned in the inning. Bottom half of the 6th we go. This is the final frame for Ron Darling. A single to center by Esaski. Then a force play by Foley. A 4-6 force out. Van Gorder walks on 4 pitches. That brings a pinch hitter to the plate. We got him at first and second. 1 out. Tying runs on, and we can't even move him up. 2 straight pop-ups. No production here. Krenchicki, batting for Leslie, hits a pop-up on the infield. That's an infield fly. Santana made the catch. And Wayne has the 2nd most pinch hits on the team, although it's not many. It's now 4 for 19 as a pinch hitter. Then Reedus hit a pop-up to the first baseman. No runs, a hit, and we leave a couple. In the top half of the seventh inning against the Reds' third pitcher in Keith Cato, who hasn't been doing a very good job of late, although he did retire 6 of the 8 men he faced in this game. As I mentioned, those 2 batters in between there in the 8th scored on the big home run by Strawberry. That turned out to cost Cato the game. He gets him in order in the 7th, the first time they haven't left at least one man on base. Santana grounded out to second, pinch hitter Hodges batting for Darling, struck out swinging, and Wilson fly ball to right field. The bottom half of the 7th inning, trailing by 2, the Reds get 2 and tie the game on this Dan Driessen bolt called by Joe Nuxhall.
Pitch on the way. Driessen drills it. It's tied up. Now Danny jumps on it and hits a line drive out of here in right field to tie it real quick. For Driessen, his 7th home run of the year. He now has 28 RBIs, and that brings the crowd to his feet. Oh, Danny jumped on it, bingo, just like that, and that was a frozen roof. So Ron Darling doesn't have to worry about his 11th win, and Brad Leslie does not have to worry about a loss.
Yes, indeed, that game-tying homer by Driessen deprived Darling of his 11th win of the year, and it would have been his 8th consecutive triumph. Line drive homer over the right field fence by Driessen. That's the 3rd time he's been on base. He had walked twice previously, so now 7 home runs and 28 RBIs for Driessen. That's a 2-run, nobody-out homer hit off of the reliever lefty Tom Gorman, who had just come in. The first 2 batters that he faced score. As Oster led off with a single into left field, and he came around on the Driessen home run. Dave Parker then fouled out to third base, so did Dwayne Walker. Then Esaski flied to right. 2 runs, 2 hits. Top half of the 8th, those same totals for the Mets. Every time the Reds come up and tie the game or go ahead, the Mets immediately, the next inning, untie it. And they go ahead. It happened several times in the game. Reds were tied at 3, tied at 5. Now the Mets go ahead by 2 again. And the first 2 batters score on a home run, just like the Reds' 7th inning. This is off of Cato. Chapman had an infield single off of the pitcher's glove that probably should have been fielded by Cato, but it goes as a hit. Then Strawberry has a deep drive into left center field. His 3rd home run of the series. And his 6th against the Reds this year, his 15th against the league. Gives him 52 runs batted in. And it must be close to 15 or 16 against the Reds this season. He's been devastating on us, and the second time he's gone the other way, he's got awesome power. He looks like a track star, really, when you look at him, but he can fool you with the power, a great power for him. An opposite field power like Dale Murphy. He's not built like Murph, but he can go the other way like he can. Home run, left center, 7-5 Mets. Then Foster goes down swinging. Brooks a ground to shortstop, and Danny Heap also grounded out to short. In the bottom of the 8th, the Reds are out in order against the 3rd Mets pitcher of the game. Gorman only goes 1 inning, gives up a game-tying homer, but he's the winning pitcher of record. Now we got lefty Jesse Orozco coming on to mop it up, and he retires 6 of the 7 that he faces. The one man he doesn't get out hits a home run off of him. Pinch hitter Concepcion batting for Foley hit a ground ball to shortstop. Davies now the worst pinch hitter on the team, 0 for 9 in that department. Van Gorder fly ball to center field, and pinch hitter Skeeter Byron's batting for Cato hit a fly ball to center, and Skeets is now 1 for 5 as a pinch hitter. The Reds 0 for 3 today in that capacity, now hitting a lowly 176 as pinch hitters this season with 1 homer and only 9 RBIs. Nothing across there. Now we go to the top half of the 9th. It's a new pitcher, Ted Power, the most worked pitcher in the league, his 51st appearance, and he does a good job again. He's done a fine job this season out of Vern Rapp's pen. He gets him 1, 2, 3, and the final 6 go down in order. That doesn't help us in the long run. Fitzgerald, a ground ball 6-3 on the first pitch. Fine 1 hop toss to first by Davey. Good play. Santana on the first pitch grounded out 4-3. Keith Hernandez, who entered the game late, batting .307, 9 homers, 55 RBIs. He taps out first baseman to the pitcher, so a 4-pitch frame, and Power doesn't even break a sweat there. Bottom half of the 9th inning, Gary Reedus leads off.
That one hit into left field. Well, going back, Foster. A chance. It's gone. Home run left center, Gary Reedus, his 4th of the year, the first home run this season, given up by Jesse Orozco.
So that brings the Reds to within 1 at 7-6. Unfortunately, that is the final score because the next 3 batters go out in order. Long homer to left center by Reedus. As I mentioned, his first since May, and the exact day would be May the 18th at St. Louis's Busch Stadium, and he hit that one off of John Stuper, who I think has been up and down with the Cardinals in Louisville this year. And that was Reedus' 8th run batted in on that 3rd homer. This is his 4th homer of the year and his 10th RBI, so therefore only 1 RBI in between. And this is his first RBI in many weeks, and as I say, just his 2nd since the 18th of May. And of course, he had over 50 last year, was 2nd or 3rd on the team in that capacity. But at least maybe this will break the ice, hitting a home run off of a hard-to-hit man like Orozco, and he belted that one to deep left center. Then Oster looked at strike 3, not happy about that call at all. He was almost ejected by Wendelstedt. He was throwing obscenities from the dugout Wendelstedt's way, but apparently they fell on deaf ears, and Oster not exactly happy. Then Dreesen hit a pop-up to second base, and Parker hit a squiggler to third, fielded by Brooks. He fired onto the first baseman Hernandez to get the series ending out, and the Mets had won 3 of 4 in the set. A run, a hit in the 9th for the Reds, and Orozco gave up his first homer, but it sure didn't hurt him at all, as he was able to retire 6 of the 7 around that home run. He did a fine job again, and he gets another save. Mets 7 and the Reds 6. Now it's final stats time. First for the New York Mets, a total of 14 players used, and 3 players went out there to the mound today in the 92nd game of the year for the Mets. They're now playing at .598, 55 and 37, 2.5 ahead in the East. Number 1, Mookie Wilson, center field, 0 for 4. He scored 1. Number 11, Kelvin Chapman, second base. He was 1 for 2, walked 3, scored 3 times. Number 18, Darryl Strawberry, right field. Darryl was 2 for 5. He knocked in 2 and scored 1. The same line is for George Foster, number 15, the left fielder. 2 hits, 5 at-bats, a run, and 2 RBIs. So between the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters, they knocked in 5 of the runs. Now between the 1, 2, and 3, 4 hitters, you've got a total of 6 runs scored, 5 hits, and 4 RBIs. So they got it done today. Wilson, Chapman, Strawberry, and Foster. Hitting 5th is Brooks. He contributed with a run batted in, a run scored, and a 1 for 4 day. He's number 7. Number 9 is Jerry Martin, the first baseman, batting 6th, 1 for 3, knocked in a run. Number 25, Danny Heap, pinch hit first base, was 0 for 1. He walked once. Number 47, Jesse Orozco, pitcher, in the number 6 position. Number 20, Mike Fitzgerald, catcher, 2 for 4, 1 RBI. Number 3, Rafael Santana, shortstop, 1 for 5. Number 4, Ron Darling, pitcher, 1 for 3. Number 42, Ron Hodges, pinch hitter, 1 at bat, no hit. Number 29, Tom Gorman, pitcher, and number 17, Keith Hernandez, first base. He was 0 for 1. 38 at-bats with 11 hits and 7 runs scored. All of them were accounted for with RBIs for the Mets today. For the Reds, in their 98th game of the year, they now fall to a .418 winning percentage, 16 back, 5th place in the West at 41 and 57. And the Reds used 15 players today, 4 pitchers. Number 2, Gary Reedus, left field. 2 for 4, 2 runs, 1 RBI. Number 16, Ron Oster, second base, 1 for 5, a run scored. He stretches that hitting streak to 9 consecutive games. Number 22, Dan Dreesen, first base, 1 for 3, scored, once knocked in 2. So between our 1, 2, and 3 hitters, 4 runs scored, 4 hits, and 3 RBIs. Not bad. The top part of the batting orders today for both teams did the job. Batting 4th in right field, Dave Parker, number 39, 0 for 4 with an RBI for Dave. He's hit now in 5 of his last 6 and 12 of 17, batting .271 on the year. Batting 5th in center field, Dwayne Walker, number 26, 1 for 4 with a run scored, now down to .306, a .544 slugging average for him. Next in order is Nicky Saski, third base, number 12, 1 for 2, and 1 run scored. This breaks a string today. He had struck out once, at least, in each of his last 7 straight games, 12 Ks in those games. He still struck out 5 times in his last 3 games, 3 in 1 game earlier in this series. But he ups his average. He's up to .204. He sits safely in 7 of 9. Batting 7th, Tom Foley, shortstop, number 10, 1 for 3, 1 RBI. Number 13, Dave Concepcion, pinch hit, shortstop, 0 for 1. Davies hitting 7 of 10. He's only 1 for his last 14, though, .240 average on the year. Number 23, Dave Van Gorder, catcher, 0 for 3 with an RBI, and Dave's batting .227. Batting 9th, pitcher Joe Price, number 49, 0 for 2. He's hitting .138. Number 50, Brad Leslie, pitcher. Number 15, Wayne Krenchicki, pinch hit, 0 for 1. Number 42, Keith Cato, pitch. And we've also got number 21, Skeeter Byers, down here as a pinch hitter. 1 at bat for him. Number 48, Ted Power, pitcher. 33 at bats, 6 runs, 6 RBIs, 7 hits, 1 error for the Reds. Some pitching lines here for Cincinnati. Joe Price, 5 innings. He allowed 8 hits and 3 runs, all earned. A wild pitch, 4 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Brad Leslie, 1 inning, 1 hit, 2 runs, both earned. 3 walks, no Ks. Keith Cato, the loser, his first major league loss. He's won 1 lifetime now in the majors. 2 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, both earned, 1 home run, no walks, 2 strikeouts. Ted Power, 1 inning. And Price allowed 2 intentional walks, 2 unintentional in the game. For the Mets, Ron Darling, pretty good outing. 6 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs all earned, 7 walks, and none of those were intentional. No homers allowed. He struck out 1. Tom Gorman, the winner, 1 inning, 2 hits, 2 runs, both earned, no walks, no strikeouts, 1 home run. Jesse Orosco, a save, 2 innings, 1 hit, 1 run earned, no walks, 1 strikeout, and 1 home run. Some more data for the game. There were doubles by Brooks, Foster, and Foley. No triples. Home runs for Dreesen is 7th, Reedus is 4th, and Strawberry is 15th. A game-winning RBI, 6th of the year for Darryl Strawberry. Stolen bases for Wilson, number 27. Reedus, number 34, I think is the number for Reedus. Yes, 34th steal. Caught stealing Reedus. Double plays, none. Wild pitch, Price. Gorman wins it. He's 2-0. Orozco saves it, number 20. Cato loses his first. He's 0-1. 7 runs, 11 hits, no errors for the Mets. 6 runs, 7 hits, 1 error for the Reds. Error by Leslie. 2 hours and 46 minutes for this game. I clocked it at 2:45 unofficially. 19,420 paid in total in the stadium for the wrap-up to the series. And now we got some more pitching information for you, if you want to lend an ear here. Some Cincinnati Reds pitching lines for the year. Joe Price on the season now is 3-7 with no complete games in 19 starts with a .477 earned run average. That's the second lowest it's been all year. Started out at 20.25, then 8.31, 6.32, 6.10. Hasn't got much better since then. He's pitched exactly 100 innings, has allowed 116 hits, 9 homers, 61 runs allowed, 34 walks, 71 strikeouts. Among those statistics, 12 innings, 18 hits, and 7 runs are against the New York Mets, covering 2 appearances. No wins, 1 loss, 1 no decision, with a .450 ERA against the Mets. He allowed 5 walks, struck out 13 in 12 innings, not bad. Allowed 1 homer, that was to Strawberry. So Strawberry touched up Price. That was back on July 5th at Shea in a rain-shortened 4-3 Mets win. Stopped with 2 out of the 9th inning because of rain. He went 7 innings, allowed 10 hits and 4 runs, 3 earned with a walk and 8 strikeouts in that game. Not too bad, but he took the loss. He's now 3-2 lifetime against the Mets, 2-1 last year in 3 starts with a good 1.71 ERA. Now for Brad Leslie, this is his 10th appearance and his 6th appearance since returning from Wichita. He's 0-1 with a 5.54 ERA. That goes up from 4.50 with a bad outing today. He's allowed 3 runs in his last 2 games, 4 runs in his last 3 games. He's pitched 13 innings, allowed 13 hits, 2 homers, 8 runs, 11 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's had a control problem, and he has saved 2 games in 10 appearances. Keith Cato has really gone downhill lately. He was at 135 with a save, only 1 run allowed in his first 3 games. But in his last 4 games, he's given up 4 homers, 1 in each game. He's allowed 10 runs in those subsequent appearances. Since coming back up, he's got a 6.60 ERA, 0-1 with 1 save, 15 innings. He's allowed 5 homers, 19 hits, 11 runs, 3 walks, 12 strikeouts, and 7 appearances. And now we get to Ted Power. He's got a good batch of numbers here, 51 appearances. He's got part of a shutout under his belt, 4 saves. He's only allowed 3 homers in 78 innings, has a 3.12 ERA. He's 5-5. He has walked 35, has struck out 56, has dished up only 64 hits and 27 runs in the 78 frames. Good numbers for Power, and this is second year with the team. Had a high ERA last year of 4.54. He started some, but has obviously found his niche in the Reds bullpen. Some stats for these Mets pitchers. Darling, 2-0 against the Reds lifetime in this year. 21 innings he pitched against the Reds in 3 starts this year. Came away with a complete game and a shutout and a 129 earned run average. Allowed us just 10 hits and 3 runs, 15 walks, 8 strikeouts. Did not serve up a long ball. Hit 1 batter and threw a wild pitch. Back on April 4th, second game of the year at Riverfront, he won, combined with Doug Sisk on a 2-0 shutout, allowing us just 2 hits, no runs in the first 6 innings with 6 walks and a strikeout and a wild toss. Then he had a complete game 1-0 win on a Hubie Brooks home run in the first game of the July 6th twilight doubleheader at Shea. 9 innings, 4 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, and a hit batsman. Overall this year, he is 10-3 with a 3.24 earned run average in 20 starts, has 2 complete games, both are shutouts, no saves, 9 homers allowed, 127 2/3 innings, 108 hits. That's a good ratio of 7.6 per 9 innings. He's allowed 50 runs, 66 walks, 73 strikeouts. And we also take a look at Tom Gorman. He's 2-0 with no saves and a 3.21 ERA. That goes up from 2.76 even though he wins. He's allowed 4 homers, 2 in this series. Gave up on the Parker the other day. He has finished 7 relief outings. He's made 21 appearances, no complete games. He's walked only 5, has allowed 12 runs, 28 hits, and 33 2/3 innings, 20 strikeouts. And Orozco has some dandy numbers. 8-2, 20 saves, 30 games finished in 34 relief outings. Only the 1 home run dished up, 15 runs, 36 hits, 54 1/3 innings, 22 walks, 51 strikeouts, 1.82 earned run average. That ain't bad for Orozco. He's 1-8 and has saved 20, so is responsible there for 28 of the wins. Another 14 saves go to Doug Sisk, and the only other one on the Mets staff belongs to Ed Lynch, which was actually a save that was added later. And that was against the Reds. I did not report on that in my Reds recap show the other day, a few broadcasts back when I reported on that game. Lynch did get a save in that game, but it was delayed, I guess, because the papers didn't show it and Marty didn't say it on the radio. But Lynch was credited with a save, which I thought he should have been in the first place, so he did get it. But Orozco's got 20 and 34 combined between those two fine bullpen aces, Sisk and Orozco. Well, there you have all the particulars concerning this ball game on this Sunday in July in 1984. The Mets winning over the Reds at Riverfront to close out the series 7-6. The final, as the Reds lose for the 3rd straight time and for the 6th time in the last 7 games. Cincinnati has also lost 14 of 16, 17 of its last 23, and 19 out of its last 27. So that's not even 300 baseball in the last 27 games, whereas the Mets are going in the other direction. 3 straight wins, 13 wins in their last 16, and they played at an 8-10 pace in the last 21 games, 17-4 in those 21 to hoist them 2.5 ahead of the Cubs in first place in the NL East. And now let's take a look at the scoreboard for July 22nd. Take a look at the divisional leaders in the American League East. To nobody's great surprise, the Detroit Tigers under Sparky Anderson continue to set the pace with the best record in baseball, .695 percentage at 66-29. And it might surprise you to know that the Mets own the 3rd best record in Major League Baseball. They would be in first in any other division except the AL East. They'd be in 3rd in that division. They're only behind the Tigers and the Blue Jays as far as the Major League records are concerned. Toronto's 9 back, but with that 2nd best record in this game. Baltimore's 14 back. In the West, it's California by 1 game over Chicago. In the East of the National League, of course, the Mets, as I mentioned, 2.5 ahead of the Cubs and 3.5 over the Philadelphia Phils. In the Western Division, the Padres, who will be hosting the Reds on Tuesday with a nice 56-40 record. That's the best that the West has to offer by some 7 games over the 5-10 playing Atlanta Braves. Atlanta just 50-48. The Dodgers 8.5 back, the Astros 10, then the Reds 16, and the Giants 18.5. So the Reds still 2.5 games out of the gutter, 6 games behind the 4th place Astros. Let's take a look at final scores from around baseball today and tonight. There was one night game in the National League. That was at Houston. They always play those night games for some reason down at the Dome on Sundays. The Astros beat Montreal under the lights 6-1. Of course, under the glass also. Astros win. The Giants clobbered the Cubs 11-5. St. Louis nicked Los Angeles 7-6. The Phillies beat Atlanta 6-2, and the Padres and Pirates split a doubleheader. Pods won the first game 5-1, and in 11, Pittsburgh came back and beat the Padres 3-2 in the nightcap. In the American League, it was Detroit 2, Texas nothing. The Yankees shaved Minnesota 6-5. It was Cleveland 4, Chicago 1. Kansas City downed Baltimore 8-4. Boston blanked California 3-0. Toronto defeated Seattle 5-3, and it was the A's 5 and the Brewers 4. And once again, repeating the Riverfront Stadium final this afternoon. It was a 2-hour and 46-minute game played in front of 19,420 spectators at the stadium. Unfortunately, the Mets win again, their 3rd straight over the Reds. New York 7, Cincinnati 6. And until next time, I'll say so long for now. This is DVP reporting.